Hello, hello, hello. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of TA Tech Unboxed. In each episode, we're chatting to the people behind the products that TA and HR teams use every day. If you're listening to this on Apple or Spotify, don't forget to head over to YouTube, where there'll be an exclusive unboxing of this episode's product, alongside all the other episodes, demos, product updates from your favourite TA Tech. While you're there, don't forget to drop us a follow to get notified of new shows as they go live. And as usual, there'll be a link somewhere in the description, whether that's above or below. I'm Chris Haslam, and I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Darren Bush. Mr. Darren Bush, how are you?
Very well. Really good, Chris. We can't time date or anything about where we are, but all I can say is looking forward to Christmas.
Looking forward to Christmas. That's why I'm constantly in my lucky denim shirt.
Yeah.
There's continuity.
There is.
Audio, video continuity. How have you been? How's it into the holiday period?
Yeah, it's good. As always, I think, you see on LinkedIn about recruitment in December. Everyone says it's always a quiet time for other people, but never for recruitment. There's always things to do.
Yeah, exactly. If it's quiet, we have to find something to do.
Always have to find something to do. Yeah, there's always something to do.
Busy. Yeah. If it's busy, it's because you're hiring.
Yeah.
So yeah, great chaos. But we thrive in chaos. And it's the holiday season, so we feel merry and happy and jolly.
You certainly do, which is good. I like it.
I mean,
it's gonna be a good episode then.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
And who do we have on today's show, Darren?
Chris, today we've got Tom Hacquoil, CEO of Pinpoint. Welcome to the show, Tom. I'd love to hear about you and about Pinpoint.
Cool, thanks. Hey Darren, hey Chris. I'm Tom Hacquoil, founder, CEO of Pinpoint. We're an ATS. We're based in the UK, service both the UK and the US markets, as well as like a long tail of 60 odd other countries. We care about the mid-market. I'm sure we'll talk more about the business in a bit. I'm 32. I've got 2 kids. This is my 4th attempt at a business. One's gone terribly. One's gone not so bad. One's gone somewhere in the middle of that, and this one's going very well.
I mean, that's where we start.
Yeah. I'm slightly depressed as well that you're 32 and you've got 4 companies as well under your belt. So
they're not all good, mate. They're not all good. So don't worry.
They're still.
That's it, though. That's what makes a great founder, right?
Yeah.
Learning from all those mistakes. So that is where we start normally, Tom.
Sure.
We want pre-Pinpoint days.
Yeah.
What brought you, culminate your experience, and then what brought you into Pinpoint?
Cool. I'll go pretty quick. So I'm a nerd, really proud of my nerdiness. I made websites for people for freelance as a kid when I was at school at 13, 14 years old. Got quite confident that I was going to make a career of that. Always had a good idea of what I was going to do. So I left school at 16 to do that. Basically, didn't get very far educationally. I don't think education is a word. That sort of is ironic, but we'll take it. Fundamentally made websites for people, turned that into a business, grew that business reasonably well. So from sort of 16 to 20 years old, built a little web consulting business called Infuse Internet, grew it to about $1 million in revenue, felt very successful at the time. In reality, I was very good at making websites and very bad at managing people and running a business. And so to cut a very long story short, that business sort of went from hero to zero very, very quickly. I ended up with about $300,000 of personal debt because that business imploded and I kept paying people and took on the debt. I was a fool. So I got a big loan and basically paid that over about 5 years. Went and worked for one of my clients, a cloud computing business called Colligo, which did really well. They grew massively whilst I was there. I ended up being the CDO, which is like a wanky job title that means I did all the stuff the CEO didn't do. And we raised VC and PE money, and I spent a lot of time basically buying small companies and smashing them together, mainly in the US and Canada. Really enjoyed that, learned loads and loads of lessons from the founder and from everybody else involved in the business. Whilst I was doing that, I also bought a small web hosting company from like a failing telco and sort of turned the technology around and sold that on and did okay out of that. But yeah, basically I paid off all the debt that I'd inherited from the first business whilst I was working this job. And whilst I was doing that, I kind of quite quickly realized that I wasn't going to be the best engineer in the world anytime soon, but that I am a geek and I really like what I would call organizational design. So essentially like thinking of companies as systems and thinking of them as like programs with the people being the variables. And so Pinpoint was sort of born from that, right? As soon as I paid the debt off, I wanted to start a SaaS business, and Pinpoint was that SaaS business.
Ooh.
Whistle stop tour.
And not only is there a whistle-stop tour, it's probably one of the. And it's not
I had the same thing. I had the same thought as you. Yeah, yeah.
Lots to unpick there. So 16 to. I've just got your LinkedIn up in front of me to the left. If you see me look to the left, you did that for 6 years from 16.
Yeah, like sort of 4 or 5 well, and then sort of 1.5 very badly. Yes, but
really similar story. I did the same at 20, and I got told about the corp tax debt element staying with you. You can never, like, it takes ages to be a founder again. I was like,
yeah.
So I borrowed, and then I worked to pay it off. So it's I feel your
Well,
pain.
fair play. Nice to meet a fellow debt-ridden founder. Yeah, yeah.
Luckily, like you all paid off and did really well. And it's like a passion. I had a passion for wanting to be a CEO, or wanted to be a founder and be part of that, like breaking things, fixing them. And I agree with your point on systems, like system design for business. That is one big project management project, isn't it?
Yeah.
Multiple moving parts inside of it. Literally said that to my partner on a walk this morning.
Nice.
Everybody overcomplicates business, right? It's literally getting those systems right and getting great people that own each of them. So that is cool. Colligo.
Yeah.
So just take us to there. So you come out of that business, you go in as you were a software engineer at that point.
Yeah, exactly. So Colligo were a client. Julian, the founder there, is a close friend of mine now and has been for a decade plus. But at the time, they were a newly built cloud computing business. Julian had just sold another cloud computing business, wanted to build something new, needed someone to kind of help build the early technology, the sort of the website, some of the sort of customer facing stuff. And my business did that for them. I think he sort of saw me as just like a really terrible version of him. And so when my business imploded, he gave me a job very kindly, and I joined as the sort of director of software development, built out their sort of software team. So that was all the geeky stuff that sat on top of the cloud infrastructure that was kind of shown to customers. About as irrelevant to HR tech as you could possibly imagine, to be honest, and possibly the only thing less sexy than building an ATS as a job. But I'll take it. It worked. It paid my debt off. And so, did that. And as I say, over time, we ended up building a great team of engineers, many of whom actually, by the way, work at Pinpoint now.
What does he say about that?
I think he knew exactly what my plan was from day one through to today. So we're still very close friends.
Good friends.
That way.
Good.
Yeah. But no, look, over time, kind of graduated out of that role. We brought a fantastic person in who does now work at Colligo, who took my job who works at Pinpoint rather, who took my job at Colligo, and I moved into more of like a COO type role, looking at things like people, HR, marketing, kind of everything that wasn't the core tech.
And then a little bit of M&A. Did I catch it?
Yeah. So look, cloud computing business is really different from SaaS, which is what we do now, right? And it's very capital intensive. You need lots of infrastructure, you need data centers and so on and so forth. So that business raised VC money, and then we raised a big round of private equity money. And that money was mainly used to sort of expand into the US in a bigger way and to buy sort of small scale cloud providers in predominantly the East Coast of the US and Canada. And
at that point, your role becomes like stitching together the problems from each and making them work as one big.
Yeah, I don't want to overstate my involvement because a lot of this stuff really happened after I'd left, but sort of I laid some of the foundation for that work and thinking about, again, really crass, like boring stuff like culture and like integration and like what that looks like and what we should look for in a potential M&A target beyond just the technology, and sort of thinking about growing the business quite quickly, basically.
That the CEO needs to learn about.
Yeah, but look, Julian is really, really, really technically strong, and he's got loads of really like very great strengths. I think he would say he's probably not as interested in some of these elements of the business as maybe I was, and so it was an opportunity to kind of step up and fill a void, but something that really attracted me anyway. And I was also, whilst I was doing this, I forget to mention, I'm involved with a local kind of economic development initiative called Digital Jersey, which is designed to make like Jersey a tech center. Think of it as like Tech Nation or something in the UK. And one of the things Jersey lacks is like a talent pipeline for entry-level programmers. So I built a 6-month evening school scheme called the Coding Program very originally, which is like a free school, 4 hours a week in the evenings for 6 months. You work with industry, you build projects, guarantee a technology job as an entry-level programmer. And actually, there was a bit of a convergence here where I had been really struggling to manage with a bunch of other people the volume of applicants for this course. And so we actually built a version of Pinpoint to handle all of the inbound applicant volume for the course and help us score and filter them all out and decide who we would take on in each cohort. And actually the guts of that is what evolved into Pinpoint when we decided that that was the thing.
Okay. Because I was trying to work out how you decided you want to build an ATS. Is the origins then of the coding school?
Yeah, I can... Normally, we give a very markety answer to this question.
Yeah. Let's go with that. Let's go with that one first.
I can give you that one first if you want. Yeah. So obviously, I just told you all the things I care about: organizational design, systems, people, and stuff like that. We built this tool to handle the Digital Jersey coding program, and it felt like it had the guts of something that we'd actually solved a meaningful problem. There was other tools in the market that could have done similar things, didn't quite have the same vibe to them, and so we felt like we could take that and productize it. I think. The actual answer, if I'm being really honest, is a bit more boring than that, which is I like money and I like building businesses that are actually successful, having built them that are built versions of businesses that aren't. And so my observation was just that there was actually a really big gap in the market. And I think I talk to people all the time. I had a conversation 2 hours ago with someone, and they all say the same thing, which is like, why build an ATS? There's thousands of them, and that is a correct factual statement. That doesn't mean that they're all good and appropriate for the market that we're in today. And I sort of felt like actually there's a big segment of opportunity here. And I can get into loads of detail on that, but it's not that marketing-y, funny stuff. It's kind of more pragmatic, financial, market opportunity driven.
And one of the questions we also like to steer towards when we get to the product section is to talk a little bit about kind of who is it for? Because me, Darren, one of our founding story for TA Tech Unboxed was finding it frustrating for both of our use cases. So we'll get into that stuff a little bit.
For sure.
Yeah. And kudos, by the way, on the Digital Jersey thing. Like, that is cool. That is really cool.
It was fun.
Still part of it.
So I'm on the board of Digital Jersey now, yeah, and so very, very much still a part of the organization. I'm not day-to-day involved in the coding program. That's sort of still run, but not by me anymore. I don't really have the capacity for that. And to be honest, I wasn't adding any value. I was sort of useful in the creation bit, but there's far better teachers and far better people. Like, there's people far better placed to run that today than I am. But I will say, again, a lot of our employees at Pinpoint were on the coding program. In fact, our CTO was on that coding program 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And so, you sort of sow the seeds a long time ago, and all of a sudden they start to sort of bear fruit many years later, right?
Are you remote first, or are you hybrid, or how do you?
Yeah, we are remote first. So I think I am the strategic genius that signed a 9-year lease on a ginormous office in Jersey 3 weeks before COVID. So we have this massive, like 5,500 square foot office with 50 desks in it in Jersey. And if I went to the office today, because I'm at home at the moment, there'd probably be 4 people in there. Okay. And so, no, we are very much remote first. I think with the US, it's such a big place and we're in every time zone. We don't really have enough concentration of talent in any one area to justify an office. And then in the UK, we have people all over the country, and we've got quite a few folks in London, and they'll go into a WeWork 3 or 4 days a week. But that's like absolutely at their discretion. We sort of would rather have smart people anywhere than stupid people together.
Should we talk about here to define what is Pinpoint? Because you spoke about earlier about there's lots of ATSs out there. What is Pinpoint, and why is it different?
Sure. Yeah. Look, there are lots of ATSs, and some of them do really good stuff, right? Like, we're not here to poo-poo other people. I think we sort of have a different perspective on what's important. And so I think we do a bunch of things. I'd say, like, we try and frame it as this idea of being fast, flexible, and human, which are our core values as a business, right? And they sound very markety, but like, to kind of break them down a bit, I guess my observation is that we work with all different types of industries and organizations and company sizes all over the world, right? We don't focus on specific verticals or anything like that. What I will say is, whilst we do service loads of very cool startups that kind of look and feel a bit like Pinpoint, actually, we love working with more traditional businesses. So think of like retail, hospitality, logistics, transportation, financial service, like those types of organizations. And one of the things I kind of observed pretty early on was that lots of SaaS people, often people like me included, want to throw technology at problems and hopes it solves them. I think in reality, businesses struggle with change. I've heard you guys talk about this before in different capacities, right? And so, like, we want to give people a hug and we want to hold their hand, and we think that, like, getting people in front of people is really important rather than trying to mitigate for that. And so We care a lot about customer success and experience. I think that's probably the biggest differentiator of 2 or 3 I'll give you. And to put that into perspective, our average support response time to a support query averaged for 6 years is 46 seconds. Like we actually want to talk to you, and when you speak to us, we respond, and that makes a huge difference because we become like an actual partner, and people will ask us, what do you think of this job description? Or we've got a role for A and B and we're advertising it in these 5 places. Do you think that makes sense for this role? Or what about integrate? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, we want a partnership with customers. And I think a lot of people get to scale and they try and mitigate contact. Actually, we really encourage it. And so that's been a big differentiator for us.
It's a more consultative approach, really, isn't it? It's you're working with us, rather than kind of just like you said, the support function. You're actually we're coming to you essentially asking for advice, which is I feel that's how ATS providers should be.
I think so, and I think it does help differentiate. I think you sort of said consultative, and I think when people hear that word, often what they jump to is like professional services and fees. And I think just stressing that like this is just part of the service, right? Like there's one subscription fee, that's it. It's given to everybody. And like, I just think that's really important. Like we just want to sell the product in a way I would want to buy it if I was the customer. And so like we really lean into that, and we can touch on that again in more depth if it's useful. I think the second piece is, we look at the people we respect, right? The Greenhouses, the Levers, the Smart Recruiters, those sort of big stalwarts of industry historically. They'd all been in the market sort of 10 plus years when we entered, and they have great products. I'm not here to tell you they don't. But like they focus very much on the recruiter as the stakeholder that matters. I think we obviously are here to serve that recruiter, and they are the people we design the product around. But we also think the hiring manager is bloody important. We think the candidate's bloody important, and we build tools to help them all. And I think, again, what we've observed is most of the organizations we deal with, they'll tell you 100 times over how important candidate experience is and how important hiring manager experience is. But left to their own volition, they won't really have the capacity or the skill to deliver improvements for those people. And so we do it for them. Right, we build better careers sites. We go deeper into candidate experience surveys. We build better interview scheduling. We think more about, is the hiring manager in a retail store on a tablet rather than in front of a desktop computer with modern equipment, right? Like, how do we make life easy for each of the stakeholders? And if you engage your hiring managers, life gets better for the, I'm telling you stuff you tell me all the time, frankly, but you get where I'm coming from.
No, I think we're on the same page.
Keeping that feedback loop super tight by hearing our customers constantly must mean your product development or your fixing in those challenges is super quick.
For sure, yeah, and I think that's it. I think one of the hidden benefits, or sort of less obvious second order benefits of this really tight collaboration piece, where I keep talking about customer success, right, is because we speak to people so often, we've got all these touch points other organizations often miss. And actually, it's great because the customer gets a great experience. But actually, selfishly, what we get from it is feedback on the product. We get ideas, we get ecosystem advice, we get integration requests. Like, because we actually spend time listening, the role of the product manager in a normal organization is almost the role our CSMs play, right? And that feedback loop internally, in terms of taking stuff on the front line, building it into products, and coming back out to the business, is super, super, super tight. We ship almost every day. And so we just, we're like a quote unquote modern ATS, right? We just we can benefit from learning lessons of our sort of wiser older peers and sort of take something a bit fresher to the market, we think. And then I think the third piece, wrapping this whole kind of annoying Pinpoint sales pitch up, is we sort of split it between design and ecosystem. I think in this context, I'll say design is commoditized. I'll talk about ecosystem. I think my view is, and I'm sure we'll talk to this later, that like the market is very fragmented. And I think that fundamentally we're going to end up with like a pre-hire and a post-hire platform, right? And we think we will be the pre-hire platform. We think of the ATS market as like a hub and spoke model, where we're a hub and there's hundreds of spokes going in every which direction. Think of things like assessments and background checks and video interviewing and AI tooling and all these other things. And we really care about ecosystem. We've built the platform assuming that we weren't going to do everything from day one. We want to play nice with other people. We don't monetize integrations. And we're willing to build long-tail integrations in the markets we service that others won't. And so I think historically the view, without being disparaging to other UK vendors, was if you're in the UK, as an example, you could have a not so great ATS product with good localized integrations, or you could have a really great ATS product with poor localized integrations. And we think we can do both.
And I agree with that. I think be good at what you're good at, right? It's like, don't try and build I just saw that you've got a DocuSign integration, right? Don't try and build a DocuSign.
Yeah, but I think also
you time and money, and there's going to be loads of things that DocuSign know that you don't know. That is really just get a document signed, so we don't need to overcomplicate it.
But it also allows us to learn lessons, right? When we have a big ecosystem, we can see what our customers are actually using, and we can see what they keep using and what they stick to. And on that, we can go, hey, well, actually, 50% of our customers really spend a lot of time and energy on blah. We go build blah, but like we won't do that every week. We'll make very strategic and very conscious decisions around that, and it's useful.
You can also then have the opportunity to go, well, we see everyone's using DocuSign, so signing documents is really important. Let's go find out what about DocuSign is not fit for purpose.
Yeah, but also, you're right. But what we can also do is like, my game is just basically reduce complexity, right? And so like the DocuSign example is a great one. People love DocuSign. We have loads of customers who use our DocuSign integration. It's very deeply ingrained in their businesses. We also have loads of organizations who don't have DocuSign but need e-signatures. We saw everybody was using e-signatures at offers, during onboarding and other things. So we went and built a relationship with Dropbox Sign, previously HelloSign, and we now bulk buy credits and include loads of them for free in every Pinpoint tier. So you don't even need to buy a third-party solution, and we're kind of the stepping stone up to something for you. And so there's like levels of maturity where, yeah, we can work with DocuSign. At the bottom, we could build our own solution. But there's also these nice like middle market opportunities where we can just simplify, and like that's nice too.
Love the approach. Really love that approach, right? It's like you feel like we talked about a few minutes ago. You feel consultative, but you've got a product that is the service, the thing that we're using, not a service. That's cool. That's awesome, Tom. Sorry, Darren.
That's right. You've come from outside the recruitment industry, and you're building a network. You built an ATS product, especially at the beginning. What surprised you the most when you came into the space?
Yeah, good question, and quite a political one. I think look, the first ever like media thing I ever did, right, as quote unquote Pinpoint CEO, was like I did a Disrupt HR event where I stood on the stage and I told everyone that they were useless, and I brought data to the table, and I was basically like, here's why you all suck, right? Because my thing was like, I come from data and I work with sales and marketing and cloud computing, all these geeky things, and I think the biggest thing was just like the level of maturity of HR teams and the way they think about data and using data to make decisions, and also their propensity to like adapt and evolve into new systems. I think I sort of had a sense that it would be a little bit worse than other segments, but maybe didn't appreciate quite how bad it was. That's changing, and I'm really pleased to see that and hopefully be a part of that. But that's probably the biggest thing I observed. Yeah.
What was the data? What was the presentation like?
Yeah, it's on my LinkedIn. You can go find it if you want it. I look different then to now. I'm much more weathered now. But no, it was a small audience. It was like 50 people. So we spent a week before that literally going through all 50 of the attendees' websites, and we built a career site report on all of them. And I applied for a job with all of them, and I looked at all their Glassdoor reviews.
Right.
And I basically said, like, you all suck at this. And I put real companies' Glassdoor reviews on the website. One of them said it was like working at a morgue. And like I went and found like how long it took. One of them had an application form with like 165 questions on it, and like it was just like utter woeful. And so I just talked about how their candidate experience sucked, basically.
Wow.
I literally do this as a sales strategy.
And it worked. It worked.
Yeah, I record a video for a lot of businesses, and I ping it to them straight away. Where I'm going through the application form. One the other day was on Otter as their ATS.
Mm-hmm.
And I explained to them that even though I love Otter, I have to sign up, and the first thing I get before I apply is more jobs from your competition.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, like what no one's thought about doing Secret Shopper for their own process, have they? I'm still waiting on one client I took a call with where I emailed him during the call because it was no ATS in place. It was a send to email. I said, you ding me as soon as you get a response from that inbox that's gone to, ding me and I'll buy you lunch. No, it's not going to be 24 hours, and
for sure,
obsessed with it would be quick. I still haven't got a ding back. It could be that he doesn't want to speak to me anymore because it was a cocky thing to do.
Who knows? Yeah.
It still showed, I think, and I agree with you on that. It's like we're really bad at working outside of ourselves, aren't we? So going to a marketing team and asking what the hell is a UTM, like when someone comes to the website, are we having a look at who they? Have you built a persona for a candidate?
Yeah, but what I will say in defense of that, trying to be somewhat sensible here is, you said we there, right? Like what I would frame that comment I made previously is just that maybe the disparity is bigger. And so I have seen some amazing people in my vernacular, right? People in TA doing incredible things. And I think what's great is that when they do, they really stand out because the mean of the market is sort of not that great. The sort of standard is low, but there is some real exceptional stuff happening. And actually that's great because we can sort of see that from afar and productize that. And again, we sort of see our job as dragging the rest of the industry to perform like that. Whereas like in other more mature segments of business, I think the baseline is just much higher because the market's kind of evolved to fit that lowest common denominator.
Why do you think that is?
I'm sure we'll talk about it. I just think talent is still, in my opinion, not really viewed like strategically particularly well by people outside of talent, right? Like I spend more time today speaking to CEOs, COOs, and folks of that nature than I do directly to talent people. And it just amazes me the crap that comes out of people's mouths in terms of the immaturity when they think about organizational goals, organizational development, the role of labor markets on their company's expansion, thinking strategically about talent being a bottleneck or an enabler. Like everybody understands that sales and marketing are like the driving force of revenue, and they understand infrastructure and IT as important enablers of like people just don't get talent yet still. And I think that's why, because
people to do all those things that they want to do, right?
Yeah, but everybody says talent's my most important thing, and people are the most important part of our business. But actually, you go look at their P&L, or you go look at what they spend, or even the time they personally invest in recruiting and people and HR and ops. It's an absolute like dichotomy, right?
Yeah, you're right though. They look at sales and marketing. They're looking at those kind of revenue generating functions rather, which as Chris pointed out, that's what the talent, you need the talent in order to do that. But they don't seem to want to invest in the actual acquiring talent, hiring the best talent. That's all. They just do they just see it as a kind of an administrative function? Is that we still in that kind of era where it's you have to put recs out, people apply, and it's just kind of something you have to do?
Yeah, I think, again, to the previous point, I think there is a real polarizing difference between the best and the worst here, right? And the people doing this stuff well are doing it really well, and actually it shows. I think we used to frame this at Pinpoint, like, do you think hiring is selling or buying? And so we would say, like, poor organizations think of recruitment as buying resource, whereas good organizations think of recruitment as selling opportunity, right?
Yeah.
And actually, like, if you're in the frame of mind that you're selling opportunity, you tend to get in front of the right people and you tend to land those people. If you think you're buying resource, unless you work in an incredibly low level, very kind of boring labor market where everything is commoditized, you're already losing. And I think that is why I just think a lot of people still think of recruitment as buying resource, and they call people resource.
Should we keep the theme with the sort of how can we elevate our role? And you talk about data a lot in terms of being obviously one of your strongest point. What are the TA metrics that the teams can come, the people teams can come to the boards and to other parts of the business to actually show the impact that we deliver?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So I mean, like, everybody talks about the obvious stuff, right? Time to hire, time to fill, cost to hire, pipeline, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think like those things are important, and they're probably already in the pack. I think that the thing I would say is there's a couple of metrics that people don't often think about, and B, we can talk to those metrics, but there's a translation piece that's, I think, often lost. I think oftentimes people see their job in, I've got to produce the board pack, or I've got to produce the reporting materials, as just like put the metrics in a spreadsheet and send it up the chain. The reality is the people at the table don't know what that means, and they don't understand the ramifications of a movement in that variable on their actual underlying business. And so people can look at time to fill in isolation and go, oh, it's gone down by 3 days. Isn't that wonderful? But actually, if they're a business that sells people's time and resource, actually it's a huge enabler, because if you go win a big account, we can fill and get that account mobilized 3 days quicker or 4 days quicker, and that means X to the P&L, and that means that that like middle piece is not being connected. And I think TA people often are guilty of thinking it's the CEO's job to make that insight themselves. I would spoon feed at them.
I typically also think that is because a lot of TA teams are staffed of people that aren't either empowered to or capable of understanding how to get that the buy-in from up, right? They're not understanding that time to hire is important to them in their day, and maybe to HR or the team here, but they aren't really having their FaceTime with the leaders in the business to be able to break down what do you care about and how do I translate that into something that you are going to go, whoa, those 3 days are insanely impactful on my day or on the business day or the P&L.
Mm.
I think that's a quite common challenge that I see across the industry. Whenever I'm going in, it's like folks that just aren't capable of that work yet. Not because they're bad, but just because, like we talked about before, it's an understaffed, underfunded resource driver, a cost reduction function.
I think you're right, but I think it, and again, it's not because these people are bad. That's the last thing I'm saying. I think it's more just you're sort of talking about them maybe have not had the opportunity to sort of talk up the tree almost. I think my perspective is that's absolutely true, but also because they've not sat at that table and had that conversation or even been given context for that conversation, they wouldn't necessarily reach the conclusion I've just reached. They're not thinking that, like someone will sit there in isolation and go, my goal this year is to move time to fill down by 5%. But they don't actually themselves know what the benefit of that is.
You say that there's lack of depth and the storytelling as well.
Yeah, there's just the storytelling is really, truly important because I think everybody's time is finite and they want to be educated and not just given metrics. But what I'm saying is that you could be the best storyteller in the world. If you don't actually understand how what you're doing moves the needle, your story is not going to be very good. And I think like helping people actually understand, well, like, let's pretend I'm the CEO for a day. What do I want talent to look like? Actually, why do I even care about this? And sort of reverse engineering what the top table cares about rather than looking at it bottom up, I think is
interesting. That's what I was saying, right? It's like that's something that takes time and seniority, and you have to mature into that understanding.
Yeah,
it's something that you see a lot of TA teams that are staffed with 2, 3, 4 years, recruiters, very talented at go to market and filling jobs and getting the work done, and probably shifting the needle in a lot of places inside their own world. But yeah, I totally agree. It's like not being able to translate that back up, or at least it's somebody at the top not leading it so that TA understands what they want to see.
But this is and I think, like we could talk to specific metrics, and I use an example I stole from you, Darren, the other day, this candidate wait time metric, which I'd love you to explain because you do it better than me. But I'll take it from you then, Chris. But what I mean is like, what I guess what I'm trying to say is, rather than specific metrics, the thing for me is like, how can talent internally frame the function as proactive rather than reactive, right? And I think everything, like people look at talent, especially poor organizations look at talent as this reactive beast where the business has decided it's going in a certain direction and talent's there to keep it up with that. I think my view is like, how can we educate the business to understand the impact of things like candidate experience and wait time on the caliber of talent the business will take in? How can you understand the impact of time to fill? How can you talk about pipelining and the future value that's going to deliver for you and why it's an important investment, right? Like just teaching the TA function to think about themselves as like a proactive enabler for the business rather than this sort of lagging reactive
transactional kind of because I see it as being just a fill recs. That's the kind of the end goal. You've got to fill recs. And if you go back to maybe is it the project management triangle, which is quality, cost and time, and you could argue there's 4 as experience as well. Those are the 4. And if you just think about filling recs, where you're not thinking potentially about the quality, you're not thinking about the cost, you're not thinking about the time as well. You just kind of got it ahead as I've got a job, I need to fill it, and you're missing out those points. And I like the way you're saying there's more of a depth you need to go down. You need to explore with the managers and with the business above. And we don't, and I agree with you. We don't think like that. We constantly. I've sit through meetings where time to fill was going down, and we look at it and go, great. And then I'd argue that it was going down because probably we're in a different market. There's less candidates,
Exactly.
and there's more. The recruiters got less recs to work on. And I don't know if you're noticing that trend as well, but yeah.
It depends. I'd say because of the beauty of our business at this point at reasonable scale is that we have a real broad spectrum of the world, frankly. We have the UK, we have the US, we have 60 other countries, we have big companies and small companies, we have boring companies, and we have cool companies. And so when volume goes up in one area, it goes down in another and vice versa. And so actually like macro volume for us continues to grow, creeping up. But we are seeing lots of organizations that previously had loads of roles now have none, and we're seeing loads that had none now have loads. And so it's kind of interesting to watch the disparity between sectors.
Has there ever been, just in having that like view of the market, are you seeing anything that those that are hiring in down markets, give or take industry economics, Are you seeing anything that's like, predictive from your side? So you like, you can see a company that's doing something right, that you'll be able to say, I know that they're going to be hiring that down market because of what they're doing now. Is there any like baseline that you're seeing?
Yeah, I'll say two things on that. One is, I'm young, and one day I'd like to be like successful and investing in stuff, right? And I think I remember reading when I was really young about a hedge fund that used to use, I promise I'm going somewhere with this, that used to use satellite cameras to take photos of car parks of big companies. And they would use the volume of cars in the car parks on weekends to make an assumption on when they were going to release new products. And then they would make strategic investments on that basis. And they tended to do quite well on that strategy.
Smart.
I honestly think that like obviously we don't actually look at our candidates' data our company's data in detail because we don't have access to it. But the macro stuff we can see, I think, would make me like one of the best segment by segment investors in the market, because we see these huge trend lines on who's doing much and who's growing and who's shrinking and what sector. And so one of the things I'll say, and I can't give you a timeline on it, but one of the things I'm really keen to do is open a lot of that data up to the wider market and sort of actually start delivering insights and things like that for free to normal like anybody could come look at it. Sort of like an anonymized version of like which sectors are growing and which sectors are shrinking and which geographies are doing really well and where are we seeing job volume go up for programmers and now for designers or something like that. And so like as the data set that we have gets bigger and bigger, and it's millions and millions now, but as it gets bigger and bigger, the risk of us showcasing something that could be pinned to an individual client kind of goes down and down and down and down and down, and eventually we're going to hit that tipping point where we can start to publicize some of this. And so kind of watch this space, because super excited to be able to do that.
How can businesses, you talk about this, moving from location centric to talent centric? How can business kind of adapt to that?
Yeah, we do talk about this all the time. We always used to say like people used to recruit within 30 miles of their office, and now they're recruiting in a time zone or sometimes even less than that, right? And that is a change for people, and I think they struggle to adapt to that oftentimes. And so that has impacts on sourcing strategy, that has impact on requisition process, that has impact on comp. And I think like the way I try and think about it is this idea of like complexity to fill, right? And so if we go back to the talent thing, there's this interesting like dynamic between leadership, or let's even forget leadership, interesting dynamic between hiring managers and recruiters, right? Where oftentimes if you're used to recruiting on location, a lot of the variables that you need to think about today, you didn't need to think about in the past. And so someone will come to you and they'll be like, I want an engineer, they need to have 3 years of experience, they need to have this level of comp. These are the things I need them to have done, yada, yada, yada. And off the recruiter goes. I think now, like, I'd love, and we don't have this today to be clear, but I'd love to have something like a complexity to fill where the recruiter can go, well, here's my hiring manager brief. I can pop that into Pinpoint in the new job creation or new rec flow. And it's actually going to say, well, you could do that. But actually, if you looked for that person in this location, in this time zone, and slightly changed the job spec, the output and the delivery would be the same, but the time to fill would be half, or the size of the available labor market would be triple, or the cost would be 75% of the... do you see where I'm coming from? And like prompting that conversation, but the idea is I'd want you to sit there with the hiring manager and tinker with the variables together and go like, does this meet your requirement? Because it's about taking the hiring manager on a journey and having them understand all the variables they're not thinking about as like weapons, right?
Your approach here is that's what I think I was talking about before this, right? It's like getting that data right now.
Yeah.
Insanely expensive. We used
it is
last year, and we did exactly that, right? Started to look at which markets that they could affect change in, whether that be budget, diversity. It could literally be in any market where we were looking at where we could move a rec to that might hit a goal that they wanted to achieve. But having that inside your ATS, and also your approach to building an ATS as well, or let's not call it that, right? It sounds like you're moving towards being a center point, an ecosystem for TA, right?
I think we are. I think all I would say is that like we still see ourselves as an ATS. We just think what an ATS is evolving, right? Like I'm not trying to call myself some fancy new, Lever for a while called themselves talent relationship management. And we used to get loads of prospects come to us and go like, I don't know what talent relationship management is. I want an ATS. Do you still do that? Right. And like, so I'm not trying to not be an ATS. I just think what it means to be an ATS is going to change. And we're trying to be at the forefront of what that actually looks like in the industry.
Because I do like what HubSpot are doing for...
Me too.
business. I don't know if you're a user, but
We are, yeah.
But every time they launch something, we bolt it on because it becomes super useful. And I do believe that the ATS is without wanting to be too grandiose, the ATS is our HubSpot.
I believe that too.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm excited to see where you guys go with that without overcommitting you to saying you're a talent relationship management.
Yeah.
With an ATS as well, there's some things that get leveled at them is the poor candidate experience. These aren't your words, but we spoke earlier. Often the product roadmap for the client normally sits with the recruiters, and the recruiters always want that extra feature here, or they want that improvement to that table here, and they drive that. And I don't know if you ever tagged or if other companies have done this, where they tag and actually see the improvements are around the recruiter side and never about the candidate side. And it's great to hear that you invest very much in the candidate experience. But why, in your opinion, is candidate experience so poor across the industry? As one question, and two, do we do enough as an industry to convince hiring managers and business leaders that the importance of candidate experience?
Yeah, great question. So, to answer the second question first, no, and we'll come back to what that means. But no, we don't. And I put myself in that camp as well, by the way. As I also am a recruiter in now. The previous question around candidate experience and the importance of that and why do organizations struggle with that, I think it comes back to this idea that we still believe most organizations think of recruitment as a buy-side problem and not a sell-side problem. And so they think there's too much optimization, sort of low-hanging fruit to be had focusing on the recruiter and the HM rather than there is focusing on the candidate because of the candidate's problem, right? And I think, again, we just like data. And I think we also just like to be pragmatic. And what I mean by that is, I can't give you a real world example because it would just be offensive, but we've had prospects come to us and they've been like, our ATS sucks. We don't get any candidates. It's not posting people. And we'll go and look at their careers website and we'll look at their application flow and we'll look at their job description. And it's abhorrent, right? It's embarrassing. You would not want to be associated with this business as an example. And we'll just tell them the problem is not the ATS. You could buy Pinpoint and we're better, but we ain't fixing that, right? There's only so much you can polish a turd, bluntly. And so we're sort of focusing more on we could do that, but actually what we should do first is spend some time teaching you how to write a job description and teaching you to think about what a candidate wants. And also just looking at data. We had an interesting thing during COVID where obviously labor markets were all over the place. And we were seeing candidates, especially for, think of more high volume jobs in things like retail, hospitality, logistics and transport, where we'd have a truck driver come through Indeed and apply for 50 different jobs in 45 seconds, right? And they haven't even looked at the brand. And what would then happen is each of those truck driving companies would take 3 or 4 days to respond to that individual. And they would say, hey, Chris, come in for an interview. Or, hey, Darren, we'd love to meet you face to face for a briefing. And by the time they've got the email, they forgot who they even applied for a job with. And they've just got this very blank generic email that says Trucking Co. wants to have a chat with you. Actually, the answer is, well, can we put the job description in the email and can we link to an FAQ about the why you might want to work at them versus something else? Because you haven't got their attention for very long, right? And people just don't think of the candidate as the customer, and the candidate is the customer. And so you have to work bloody hard to make them want to sort of buy your job, if that makes any sense.
So true, because you think about when the hiring manager writes the job description, they always think that is the only one job that they're going to see. They write about a company, and they don't actually put their eyes on the candidate scrolling through. Very much, like you would have, you just scroll through and swipe through and then look at it. I need to grab your attention for 5 or 6 seconds. And if you're just going about us, about the company, about what we do, it's boring.
It's just marketing. Yeah. Our best hiring managers are sales and marketing people because they know how to sell it. They know how to sell the opportunity. And the job description and the job ad, not the same thing, right? Yeah.
And they work with the copywriter to get it out.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, but go read our job descriptions. You'll see what I mean, right? The way we frame and try and position what it means to work at Pinpoint is very specific to us, but it gets us exactly the type of folk we want. And I think people just aren't willing to go through that exercise, and often they just don't think they need to. And that again is why our strategy is often, if we observe that as the problem, let's just fix it without being asked. Because if we don't fix it, no one's going to do it. And I think actually, to your point, Chris, on functionality and features, I think oftentimes people sat in my shoes or in our product team's shoes are really forced to think very short term, right? And what they'll go and do is they'll go, well, I could build a tool to help the candidate get more information about the job before they apply, and that might nick up conversion rates by 0.5%, but no one's going to pay for that, right? Like none of our customers are buying that as an add-on, whereas I could ship blah, blah, blah AI functionality and someone will pay me another 500 quid a day for that. Brilliant. And like, actually, we are just prepared, I think, to take a much longer term view on like the role our product plays in the ecosystem. And hopefully in a few years, you'll see the dividends that kind of reaps for us.
And bravo to that. And I shall forever be supporting that as a mantra for an ATS for that's buying. Like, you know, I've lost faith in, I won't name them.
Everyone other than us is what I'm hearing you say, right? I agree completely.
That's what he's saying.
Yeah, I heard it.
There are some great ATSs in the market that are doing some good things, but what frustrates me is an ATS that says, "Oh, we're really good at employer brand." It's like, great, but if you're if you're not aggregating the jobs, I'm not using it. It's not worth it. Or you know, if you're not allowing me to post a job advert or receive applications, or you know, there are some core things that you've got
basic stuff. You're saying
really well first.
Yeah.
Then I care about everything else. I again, going back to the bolting on element, the integrations that you've got, I really respect that.
But to Darren's earlier question on like, because I'm coming back to it with a bit smarter now, I think like you said, sort of what was the thing that surprised me the most about the sector? And I think I gave you the answer about the people and the propensity to change. I think the thing I'd say, having thought about it whilst we've been talking now, is actually just how important the not sexy stuff is and how not important the sexy stuff is, right? Like my background in technology tells me that the right thing to do right now is to build AI technology and go deep on tech and go deep on this and deep on that. And so actually getting the basics right and really, really, really optimizing the basics is actually, I think, where the value is derived in our world. I think like, look, we just shipped Insights Hub. We love it. We think it's amazing. You talk about HubSpot. We want to deliver HubSpot quality reporting. We do that now. We love that stuff. But like that isn't the daily. That's not the stuff we do every day, right? What we do every day is make the fundamentals better, and I think that took me a couple of years to learn. But maybe a slightly better answer to the first question.
It also looks great, Pinpoint. I mean, kudos to that.
Thank you.
Like,
Thank you.
I think you've got my favorite brand.
That's going on the website. Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah.
I think you've got my favorite brand. I think and I think that's a really big part of like adoption, isn't it? It's like I've got to feel like, oh, this is cool. Or I feel really cool.
Yeah, and you're looking at my LinkedIn feed as well, by the way. Just a feedback on that. It's like
Thank our very wonderful marketing team for that. They're very good at making me look remotely interesting. But but yeah, no, look, I think when everyone went left, we went right. Everyone went blue and sans serif, and we went like beige and serif, right? Like we just wanted to do things a bit different because we think our approach is different. We want that to come across in the design, and I think thank you for saying that it does. It means a lot.
Genuinely, a big fan.
How do you foresee the AI impacting the TA space at the moment?
Yeah, in a big way is the honest. I think I'm sort of uncharacteristically reluctant to adopt innovation in this context as fast as everybody else is, because I want to be cautious about and sensitive about how we roll stuff out and what we choose to prioritize. I think we talked a minute ago about AI making very commoditized job descriptions and stuff like that. Like, that is not the way Pinpoint is going to approach solving these problems. I think at the same time, we understand the impact AI is going to have on every part of our lives, and we think that this is really important. I think where we want to be a little bit more intentional is how can we make AI useful without it damaging the candidate experience, point one, and I'll give you some examples of that in a second. And then how can we make AI really useful in terms of communication, but make it personalized? And so like to dig into those two real quick, I think rather than AI job descriptions and candidate data and FAQs and stuff like that, I think of AI as like, one of the things we're working on at the moment is like I'm calling it like the so far summary. But the idea is like so think about the role I play in the recruitment process at Pinpoint really selfishly, right? Like I come in, I meet everybody that we are about to hire or considering hiring. I do it right at the end after they've done all the stuff. And it's not a culture interview, but it's a very generic interview where basically I try and sell people on reasons why they shouldn't join Pinpoint and see if they still want to join afterwards. And I try and kind of answer questions about the business, right? I'm coming into Pinpoint, which I think is great, obviously, because it's kind of built in my mind. But the thing I want to do is look at scorecards, look at the comms we've had with the candidate, look at the candidate CV and LinkedIn, look at any other assessments or stuff they've done. That can sometimes take a few minutes. And that's fine. It's a very valuable few minutes. But I'd love to basically have a summary generated by AI that says, Darren has had 4 interviews with these 6 people. The scorecard looks like this. The average sentiment is this. The stuff in the scorecard that was most contentious is Chris thinks Tom's really smart and Darren thinks Tom's really stupid. So maybe probe that on the interview. He did this assessment. This went well. This went poorly. He's considering offers at these companies, right? Like I can look at that. It's 3 paragraphs. It's written in plain English. It makes my life much easier. And so that's value add, but that's not negative for the candidate, right? So stuff like that's interesting. And then the other thing that I think is interesting without getting too technical and geeky is AI in the way people think about AI, like OpenAI, ChatGPT and stuff, is based on large language models, right? Like big analysis of data. I think what happens is that's really useful for certain things. But if you want stuff to sound like you, actually, the smaller you can make those models and still find them useful, the better. And so one of the things we're looking at is, can we build large language models based on all of the comms you've had with candidates in the past, gated just to your organization? So rather than trying to do this wisdom of the crowds thing where we speak and make very generic comms, can we look at how you, Pinpoint, or you, Ericsson, or whatever, how do you communicate with people? And can we basically use an AI model of just that so that when we're sending 100 nice messages to people, it looks and sounds and feels like you and your team rather than like everybody else in the world? And so I think it's an inevitability, but I want to do it sensitively and properly rather than buzzwordy and cool.
There's a really good company before, obviously, the whole AI revolution company called Acrolinks that does something similar to that prior to this, so that you can embed it into, it isn't TA related, but it's to do with comms. Mm-hmm. So you can have Acrolinks in your embedded as a Chrome extension when you're emailing. It kind of it brings information that other people have said about you, so it just makes the whole job easier. And it's kind of on brand as well, and it's just saying certain things that everyone else has said as well. And you're right, it'd be great to have it in the TA space, especially around candidate experience.
Yeah, so that's the message really, is that look, it's coming, it's inevitable, we should all embrace it. I just want to be careful about what we deliver because we want to think of all of the stakeholders rather than just how do we make the recruiter's life easier at the expense of others.
And again, thank you. Thank you for doing that, right? I think so. I think we can really quickly be really exposed to a lot of things that aren't great for the process because we're just saying yes, like we talked about the job descriptions. Mm-hmm. If we're making it easier for AI to write it for us, it will be easier for AI to read it and thus increase the number of applications that people are using through AI apps, because we know it's happening the other side of the pool as well. It's not just recruiters using it; it's talent using it. So I agree with you, and I appreciate your approach to it. I think it's unique to the.
I love point one when you said, because I spoke about this today, which is there's this lost data. You when you look at the final round and you've got the scorecards, you've got the evaluation notes. There's this issue at the moment where the candidate will be interviewed by a recruiter, screened by him, maybe even met by another hiring manager, and then when we come to share information with another manager or someone else, say like this person's really great, we just go back to the CV again. We go back to say like, here's a CV. You've missed out. There's a good 2 hours of interviews there. Potentially you could clip it or have something summarized there. We just lose that data, and it makes it just. I mean, the other hiring manager has to start from the beginning again, and who wants to do that? So you don't make it hard. You've got to make it easy for them.
Look, I think there's that saying like compounding is the seventh wonder of the world or whatever, right? And I think like we sort of don't get the benefit of compounding information as we go through the candidate experience here, and I think that's a fallacy. And so like anything we can do to help that, I think would be good. But yeah, don't think as yet we've not done it, right? We're working on it. But watch this.
I'm gonna take that compounding quote as well and use it next time. Thanks.
Full of them.
Tom, we ask every guest, every show, what tools in TA and HR that they're super impressed with. If we have to force you for a couple of names.
Look, I think there's loads of great tools actually in the space. I think the cliche answer is MetaView, so I'm going to skip over them. I think they're amazing. I'm sure you've had that with everybody else, and that's a testament to what they're doing. If top of mind at the moment, I think like the assessment space and skills-based hiring stuff's really interesting. We work with a platform called Vervo. CEO is a guy called Omer Molad, like one of the most impressive people I've ever met in the space, and I just think they're brilliant. So yeah, Vervo assessments tool. Fantastic. Like they're a great example of someone to check out if you're looking for someone doing great stuff in the space.
How would you prefer folks reached out to talk to you about Pinpoint?
Yeah, so two things. Go to the website, pinpointhq.com. There's loads there. Follow us on social media, mainly LinkedIn and things like that. We produce loads of content. I'm not here to hard sell anybody, right? Like our hope is that you like what we do and we're an interest to you when you think about changing your ATS at some point. But yeah, there's loads of content, stuff like this. We love doing things like this. Hopefully we can add some value to what you're doing, regardless of whether you're in a sales cycle right now. Please connect with me. Like, I know my second name is very hard to spell, but it'll be linked somewhere. Find me on LinkedIn, add me. Like, I'm friendly. I'm happy to chat to people all the time. Just love learning more about the space and getting feedback, good and bad, on what we're doing. So yeah, thanks very much.
All of the links, of course, we'll share in the description for this anyway. So you'll be able to find Tom Hacquoil.
Very good. Very good. I like it.
That was my big moment. Thanks for joining us, Tom.
Thanks for having me, guys. Cheers, Chris.
Yeah, thanks very much. You're great.
That brings us to the end of the show, guys. Thanks everyone for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe, and that's it for TA Tech Unboxed.